All right, you guys, it's 10:02. We're going to go ahead and get started. Um, Hi, how's everybody? I see lots of familiar, happy faces. Some people I haven't seen since we were face to face at the service center. So makes me happy to see everybody. Um, I am really excited about the content of this webinar, and it's a little bit different than what I've done previously because I want to actually show you some of the digital tools that I'm referring to and possibly give you a chance to play with some of those things, which I'll let you guys kind of decide. I'm going to send out a poll here in a minute about what you would really like this course to be, since we have a short amount of time. So, just a couple of housekeeping things. Um, as we are going through the session, you'll see the hashtag R11 Literacy on the bottom of the screen, as well as our literacy Twitter account and my personal Twitter account. Please feel free to share anything that you think is useful, is exciting, or questions that you have. Twitter is a great place to actually connect with other educators and to collaborate. And so I kind of have like a edu scrapbook on Twitter that I keep constantly. So please feel free to share those things. Um, and this is going to be a very techie webinar. And so I'm trying to approach this from multiple perspectives of the fact that there may be some of you that dove into technology very hesitantly with all of this stuff, and it's been very difficult, very big learning curve. And then there are probably some of you that are like, finally, like my skill set gets to shine. So hopefully there's some stuff in here for everybody. We are recording this webinar so that we can post this session on our website for people to go back and watch. I am going to go ahead and start that recording. Oh, well, it already started. So great. Well, we're recording. Here in just a second, Tracy Driggers, one of the assistants that's helping me facilitate this session, is going to share in the chat a link to a Google Attendance form. And so I want to make sure that you have a record that you're here, that you get your credit. And so just as we're going, it's very, very quick. Please take the time to fill out that Google Attendance form and just pay attention to Tracy's name, because she will be sharing different links and different resources throughout the training so that you have access to those. Okay. Let's just go ahead and go through a couple of norms. I want to introduce myself for those of you that don't know me. My name is Katie Deering. I am the secondary literacy instructional content coach. That's a mouthful. At the service center. So primarily my job is providing professional development, some coaching, some curriculum work with middle and high school teachers, as well as any district coordinators, working with some administrators, specifically in the scope of secondary literacy. So I would love it if you took the time to maybe introduce yourself in the chat and just to kind of let people know what you're hoping to get out of the session today. It's been really fun seeing people connect to each other, even just in the chat, of people that know each other. They used to work together. Oh, hey, we're on here too. So it's funny how something as simple as chat intros can connect people. Real quick norming, please make sure that your mic is muted. You will have opportunities today in the training to possibly unmute your mic and share. It is helpful for me if I can see your face when you're sharing. So I know it's super tempting, and honestly, let's just be real for a second. There are some webinars that it is super easy to turn your camera off and to go clean your house, and nobody ever knows the difference. But I promise I'm a nice person and I'm a good guy and I want to see your face. So I want you to get as much out of the session as you can. And for that, I want to make sure that we can see each other and communicate that way. So if you do have to get up, feel free to stop your video. But other than that, I would love it if I could see your face if possible. And then lastly, just because we do have a large group, right now it's up to 64, and there's people that are trying to get in right now. When you have questions, not if, but when you have questions, please feel free to put those in the chat. And one of two things will happen. So either you will put that question in the chat and there's a really smart person in this webinar that has a quick response for you. And then you get your question answered immediately, or Tracy is compiling questions for me as she sees them. And I'm going to stop periodically to address those needs and address those questions. Okay, so I'm looking lots of introduction. You do not see the workshop title in the attendance form. If for some reason you don't see the workshop title, just pick one. It'll lump it all in that same group. We'll count you there. No worries. Okay. Well, we are going to get started. So we're just going to start. I want to see your thinking coming into this session because it is both an ELAR session, right? We're looking at that theme of turning up the volume in literacy. How do we increase the ability and the amount of reading and writing that kids are able to do, but also looking at that through the digital lens. So I want you to think about this question of what is digital literacy and why is it important? So how would you define that? What is digital literacy and why is it important? And you can, you're going to write your response in a Mentimeter, which is going to be accessed one of two ways. So one, you can use the QR code on the screen, or Tracy is going to share a little link with you and it'll say menti.com and you can click on the link that way and then you can type your response. So I'm going to give you just a couple of minutes to think about that question. What is digital literacy and why is that important? And I think it's also to including the context of the world as we know it right now. Your answer of why it is important might be different than it would have been in February. Okay, so feel free to specify that too. Give you a couple of minutes to do that. Bethany, I saw a question about the attendance form. If you cannot find it, we're going to share it again at the end of the session. So no freaking out, no worries. So with Mentimeter, Mentimeter is a great tool, and I'm going to be using these both just to show you tools and just in the training itself to be able to get lots of responses in a variety of formats. So I'm going to go ahead and present this here so that you can see it. And if you have not yet answered, you can see the code up at the top. So if you haven't accessed the Menti yet, you can go to menti.com and then type in the 6-digit code there. But this is a great way to just do lots of different things. So let's look at this question and then I'll kind of pull back the curtain a little bit and I'll talk about Mentimeter just as a tool by itself, okay? So when we're looking at digital literacy, what does that mean? I love that top response of being able to be literate and capable in all things digital. It is important because our world relies heavily on digital things to exist. I would agree with that, both in the definition, it's that ability, right? It's to be able to provide input and output in a digital format. And that's important because we live in a very digital world, right? I see knowing how to use and access digital resources. So much is done online. This is such an important statement. Kids aren't just born with tech skills like people assume. We have to teach them how to do the most basic things. So one thing I will say is a lot of kids know how to use technology from an entertainment standpoint. So that's really what they're familiar with is, yeah, I can get on and I can play this game or I can post this thing on social media or whatnot. But teaching yourself how to learn in a digital platform is a completely different skill set that has to be explicitly taught, right? I see competency with digital tools, knowing how to interact and communicate digitally, being able to navigate information. Ooh, this is great. The ability to use technology to find, evaluate, create, and communicate information. You're going to see a statement that looks a lot like that statement here in a second. It equals the playing field. I like that. Finding, evaluating, creating information online. It's incredibly important to this day and age, especially to our current students, due to students using online platforms each and every day. I love it. Sharing and gaining information through technology, and it's important because information can be shared in a fast way with many people. So we're seeing some similar threads, right? And one thing that I think is really important that we are coming together during this session to agree on is that based on what has happened in this spring semester, it is really no longer a choice on whether or not we as teachers can become digitally literate. I mean, I have the advantage of somebody being kind of in that middle generation where I'm a millennial, but barely. Like I think I'm right there on the early 80s birthday gap. And so I feel pretty comfortable with most technology, but a lot of the people that I taught with were like, I can't open this Word document. Like, nope, not going to do it. And I think that we're at a place now where we can definitely admit that that's difficult for us, but we can't say, I'm not good at it, therefore I'm not going to do it. Because as we saw in the spring, that digital literacy on our end is necessary. I think, I saw a lot of people in my family that struggle with technology that suddenly had to use technology platforms to provide instruction. And the learning curve of having to learn how to manipulate tech and then how to teach students how to manipulate tech and then learning how to take what was good practice in the classroom and funnel it in, it was almost too much. And several of you might be feeling that fatigue, that end of the year where you're double tired, more tired than you've ever been, because not only were you having to teach in a new way, you were having to learn so much more than maybe you ever have. So I think it's so important that we take advantage of the time that we have this summer to really increase our capacity as digital learners. I'm going to pull back the curtain a little bit with Mentimeter. This is a very common tool and it's been around a while, so some of you might feel really familiar with it. But just in case you don't, Mentimeter is a great free tool that you can do lots of different things with. So when I go to create a presentation, then I can pick lots of different things. I did this as an open-ended response. So this is something that you can use like as a back channel if you're wanting to get your kids quickly engaged and access some information. If you're just wanting them to have an anonymous place to share their thinking. I used to use Mentimeter in my classroom like this a lot. You can do multiple choice questions and you can make multiple slides. So as you're doing something in class where you have them check in and just to check their understanding, you can do that. Another feature that I use quite often is the word cloud feature. When I'm getting someone to read something and I'm wanting to see what's important to them, what stands out to them. So I'll have them read a thing and then type in your top 3 words or short phrases that stand out to you. Something that I think is really great that you can do is thinking about blended learning and giving kids some choice is being able to have a few options of learning and then having kids rank them on what they feel like is most important and then picking those things. So for example, if I was using this tool in this training, I might have 6 digital tools listed and I might ask you, I want you to rank which ones you want to learn about the most. And then I might look and see how it populates and I might pick the top 3 choices to then teach you about. So there's lots of different things that you can do here with Mentimeter. I see a question from Tanya about presentations being uploaded from PowerPoint. I do not think you can do that with the free version. There's a lot more things that you can do to customize it with the Pro. I've never needed the Pro because usually it's a very quick response that I need at the beginning or at the end, like as an exit ticket type thing. And I just embed the link in there and call it a day. So I have used it where I've created PowerPoints and then I've embedded the Mentimeter links and QR codes into my PowerPoints or my Google slide decks. So that's just a little bit about Mentimeter, and we're going to talk about that more here in just a second. So I want us to come back together to think about that idea of literacy. This definition here is from the International Literacy Association, and they released this in 2017 when we're talking about what is literacy in general. And so when we think about this definition, I'm not going to read it to you because you guys are super capable of that. But when we think about this definition, I want us to think about this in terms of response, right? When we think about our new standards, response, strand 3, is new, as in it's not necessarily been explicitly stated before in our older TEKS. And it's really focusing on that output. But when I look at this definition, a lot of times we tend to have that student output in a very narrow channel where kids reading for input and they're writing for output. And this really extends that idea of what student response could look like in a literacy setting. It's basically anything that showcases the output of that learning. So could digital coding be response? Sure. Could art be response? Absolutely. Creating a video, those kinds of things. And so we're looking at visual, audible, and digital materials, because those, if we're thinking about authenticity, those are the materials that our students are seeing in the context of the world that we're living in, right? When we think about that idea of real world application, that's super important. And so let's take that a step further. When we think about response in the new ELAR TEKS, we see that through the lens of not just writing, but reading, writing, listening, speaking, and thinking. So we're looking at that integrated, interconnected literacy approach and providing kids opportunities to respond accordingly. Now, I want to talk about this for a second, but you are going to see a pop-up show up. I am going to launch a poll for you because I want to give you guys some choice and autonomy in your learning today, okay? You're going to have an option to pick if you would rather only focus on a very small amount of digital tools with time to actually participate and play and manipulate that, or if you would rather me go through more tools, 4 to 6 tools, and just show you them, and then you can play with it later. So I am going to poll you there while I'm talking through some of these response things. Be honest, I'm prepared for both, so it won't hurt my feelings at all. When we're thinking about response, I can pretty much narrow down student response to 3 categories because we're really looking at student output. A big concern of mine, and I'll just be very frank and honest, when we moved to at-home learning, was I saw a lot of teachers resorting back to a lot of older practices of just assigning, right? It's a lot easier in Canvas to create assignments than to figure out how to actually teach material. And we know as teachers that if I'm in a face-to-face environment, it's really not best practice for me to be the sage on the stage talking at children for 45 minutes. They need opportunities to manipulate that information. They need opportunities to respond. They need lots of those different things. So it's important that when we're thinking about designing our online learning experiences, that students, it's not just input, it's not just kids getting information, reading materials, doing the assignments, that they're having opportunities to have output to make those responses. I saw if we choose 4 to 6 tools, do you have handouts with directions? I do not have a handout created, but I will tell you that the best way to learn any of these tools is to play with it by yourself. And so I'll at least show you how it works and how to get it. And if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer those via email, or I'm actually going to hang back a little bit after 11 for anybody that wants more details. So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll now. And it seems that overwhelmingly you guys want more tools, not cute how to play things. Okay. And I did see somebody want to know how I did that poll in the middle. Through Zoom, there's a way to go into your meetings to create polls beforehand, and then all you have to do is go to the polling option and launch it. So very, very simple. But when we're looking at how kids are responding, if I narrowed it down to 3 categories, I think it would be important to look at opportunities for them to write in their response, opportunities for them to speak with their response, and then technically, I could put interacting with text under one of those categories, but I think it's almost its own way where we spend so much energy in face-to-face really teaching kids how to use this to respond and interact with text through annotation. Well, that's still important when we're reading digital text, especially because of that scrolling problem that a lot of times we do. Online text is very easy to skim, so providing them with tools to respond to text in the moment, I think is important. So when we're looking at tools, these are the 3 categories today that we are going to be that we are going to be addressing. And then I see a question in the chat from Amy. Will we receive a recording of this session? I am going to post the recording that I'm currently creating right now on our website. It will be linked with the date on there. So, and it might take me a couple of days just because I have to get it approved and posted, but it will be accessible later. So you can always feel free to go back and watch it, pause it, whatever you need to do. Okay. All right, so let's look at writing tools, writing response tools. Everything that I'm showing you in this webinar is free. So I think that that's important to note. Everything that I'm showing you also very likely has some paid version of it. So don't get mad at me when you're like, she said it was free, but it's asking you to pay. Mentimeter and Padlet both have pro accounts and they both have free accounts. And either way that you go, I have used the free Padlet account and I've used the free Mentimeter account, and both have worked very, very well for me. I recently upgraded to the Padlet account just because of how many Padlets I use constantly. So I've already showed you Mentimeter, but I am going to go ahead and just kind of talk about the differences of why we would use either one. So with Mentimeter, when you're looking at things like informal assessment tools, Mentimeter is really good. It's a way to check understanding very, very quickly. You can also rely on the ease of use, because when I'm thinking about online learning or students, I can use Mentimeter from my phone, where I go onto an internet browser and just type in menti.com and I put the numbers in. I can scan it using a QR code. If you have an iPhone that's updated, your camera serves as a QR code reader, so it's super easy. I can just share the link. I can embed the link into a Google Classroom or a Canvas course. It's very easy. And so you could use that as a back channel for discussion of, as you're reading this text, put some of your thinking there. You could use it, like I said, just ways to poll and different things like that. Padlet is a little bit more organized. And so, and again, Padlet's been around a while, but when I think about tech, this is an important point to make, is that technology should never be used for the sake of using new technology. When you find something that really works well, don't substitute it with the next new thing unless the next new thing accomplishes what you want to accomplish better and easier. So Padlet, I'm going to pull up one that I've used before. Padlet is great. So one great thing about Padlet is that your posting can look very, very different. So you can create little boards. It's basically like an online bulletin board. You can create boards with columns. So if you're going to have people respond to different things throughout a lesson or throughout a unit, and you want them to be able to see that, a Padlet board is really good, because not every response has to be text. So for example, in this training that I did a couple of weeks ago, I asked people to post a GIF or a meme on how they felt about working from home. So, and then people were able to go on and like those, and that's something that you can customize in your settings, and I'll show you that a little bit more detail. And then I went ahead and I preloaded questions. So during the webinar, as people talked about the questions, they would go into breakout rooms, and them and their group would label what breakout room they were in and then what they had talked about. So it was a way to debrief that learning when I had 60 people in a Zoom room, and there was really no way to, to call on everybody or to give everybody a chance to share. So, so that was a good way to do that. You can require in Padlet that people post their name. So I'll show you how easy it is. Now, with a Padlet free account, let me go back real quick. With a Padlet free account, you're limited to how many Padlets you can make. I think with a free one, you can make up to 4 ? I think it's 3 or 4 Padlets. I'm going to tell you the way I work around that is I have 4 different email addresses that I've used for different things. And so I have 4 different Gmail Padlets that I can go back and forth on. I recently upgraded to a pro only because I'm doing so many webinars that I can't replace them. So once you've created a Padlet and you've used it, you can save that data as a PDF, and then you can delete your Padlet and create a new one. So when I did this pandemic webinar, that's what I did is I wanted everybody to have a copy of that material. So when it was over, I went and I saved everything as a PDF, and it put it where it would have one question and then all the responses on one page and so on and so forth. And I sent it to everybody. So when you make a Padlet, you have lots of choices. So you can make it where all of the content, kind of like the open-ended Mentimeter, just all surges in at one time. So if you're looking for something like just a simple back channel where kids can respond to a question, or kids can post their thinking around a certain topic, or if it's during even like something where you have a live lesson and you're wanting them to post questions, then you could have that there. There's a way that you can move it to where it's like a canvas where you can actually move the little posts around. You can make it so that it's one post at a time that's streaming, kind of like a Facebook feed. You can make it look more like a grid, so it doesn't necessarily flow, but it's in different rows of boxes, so it's a little more organized. My favorite way to do it is in the shelf. So I tend to pre-plan out my Padlets, and I like to use one Padlet for lots of things. So I will create column titles, and then people can go and push the little button on each title to post. This was great. When I was in the classroom, I did this with book clubs. So I had an AP Lit book club going where I had some students that read The Kite Runner, some students that read, I think it was for summer reading, which I'm going to tell you what we read for summer reading, and don't judge me because I didn't have any choice. I was told what I had to do. Okay. We had Kite Runner. We had, I think, Great Expectations and Crime and Punishment and Invisible Man. And so kids could pick which book they wanted to read over the summer. And so I created a Padlet where each column was on those novels. And then when they met in their little tiny discussion circle clubs, then they could post I wanted them to post like the quotes that they marked and important things about their discussion. And I wanted them to title their posts as well. So that way, at one glance, I could see what were some of the standouts of the discussion, and I could also keep them engaged in that process. So that way, when they were discussing, they were having to use some kind of a tool to think through the important pieces to put into that Padlet. You can also do a profanity filter. For those of you that are worried about that, you can do a profanity filter, and you can check off as many languages as you're concerned about. You can do profanity filters on Mentimeter.com as well. So there's that. The back channel is kind of just like a chat, and then I haven't used map or timeline yet, but we're going to make a sample one, and I will just do a very basic Padlet for you. So once you create it, it'll automatically add a background, and it'll make you a very happy, perky title and description. So then it'll ask you to modify it. So I'll go ahead and type my new title in, Digital Tools, sample. And then it will give me a unique Padlet address. So right here where you see the, AX2 whatever, then I could just change that really quickly to Digital Tools so that it's easier for my students to access. And then I can customize the appearance with the font and the wallpaper. I really care way too much probably about what my Padlets look like. So I go on and, I like them to be beautiful and whimsical. So I go ahead and I change those. And then you can scroll down where you get to customize some decisions. So do I want the author's name displayed over their posts for accountability? Maybe. Do I want new posts to show up on the top or on the bottom? Do I want people to be able to comment on other people's posts? And then how do I want them to be able to respond? So can they like posts? Can they vote up or down? Can they give it 1 to 5 stars? So if you were using Padlet for something like a book review for independent reading while kids are reading at home, that they were, as they read text, they posted a picture of the book and then some different things. And then other students could go on, and if they've read the book, they can rank it with different stars and stuff. So that's a way to make it a little more interactive. And then if you're wanting to put a grade to something, you have that option as well. Again, with the filtering, you can do it where no post will actually show up unless you, the moderator, made it so that approve the post. And again, the profanity filter I always do. So once your Padlet is done, then you can go to your sharing settings. Let's see. And you can go to share. And right now, my Padlet board is secret, but I can change the Padlet to public or whatever I want to do. And then there's automatically a place where it will auto-populate a QR code for you, or it'll help you copy the link, or you can add other people who have accounts as members where they can just see it on their own Padlet wall, okay? One thing that I like about it is it's super easy. The way that I would post is just to click the plus sign. And so now you see my post here. And when we're thinking about multimodalities and how we want to encourage kids to not just be writing, but to also be able to enhance, I can come up with some kind of a title. Oh, gotta click on it. I can write something. And then if you look at the bottom, I can upload a file. I can add a link. I can do some kind of a search here, or I can snap a photo, or I have lots of other options where I could record my screen. I can do voice audio. I can upload a video. So there's lots of options. I could draw for kids to be able to post. So when you're thinking about the versatility of this tool, that's kind of why I still love Padlet after all this time, is I haven't found a tool that makes things so simple for students that also gives them such versatility and choice in the way that they use it. In the chat box, I see that Elle posted a tutorial link for Padlet. So that's really great. And if you have any questions about Padlet, I can go ahead and answer those. I do see a question about Mentimeter, about previewing and allowing student comments. I think it just really depends on which type of presentation you put. So Mentimeter is really geared towards anonymity, which I like in that it gives students opportunities to not attach their name to a question because they feel dumb. So there are ways that you can prevent issues. I have never had an issue with students being inappropriate, and I taught 11th and 12th grade kids, but that's also just because of the community that we had, I think. I think the one time a kid wrote something dumb, it wasn't profanity. It was just, hey, y'all, follow me on SoundCloud or something dumb like that. And then we had a conversation about it and it was done. So if you're worried about that, Padlet is a lot more secure in the approvals. So I use Mentimeter for things that I'm okay with anonymity on. And there's a lot of features with Mentimeter that don't involve typing. It involves selecting and ranking. So there's ways that you can work around that as well. Okay. Any other questions there about Padlet or Mentimeter? So these are my two favorite tools when we're thinking about engaging students in response beyond any kind of LMS discussion board. Okay, well, let's talk about speaking then. And when we think about speaking, we're thinking about this in a couple of ways. We're wanting students to be able to speak. And then I'm also thinking about the way in which we respond and collaborate to each other and to our students. So the two tools that I'm going to show you here are Flipgrid and Kaizenna. Kaizenna was a new one for me this year. So some of you may have never heard of it. Flipgrid is pretty popular. So I want to start there because some of you might actually have experience using that tool. So Flipgrid is free. Again, everything is free. And it is a way for students to create video responses for some kind of a prompt. So with Flipgrid, it could be a lesson that you've embedded that then they're responding to. You could have them reading aloud an excerpt of a book if you're wanting to listen to them read. You can customize those responses to be as short as 30 seconds up to 5 minutes. I don't know anybody that has time to listen to a bunch of 5-minute Flipgrids. I always keep mine really short, but they're very versatile. So I'll show you, this is what the back end looks like with my grids, and I do not have a pro account, I have a free account. So I currently have 12 different grids that I've created at different times for different engagement pieces, okay? And so a grid is just a collection. So it's a themed collection, and then inside of your grid, you can make several topics. So if you have a unit of study that you're using and you're going to use Flipgrid a few times within that unit, or if you have a topic and you want different classes to have their own board, you can do it that way as well. So I'm going to click on this. This is something that I made for my daughter, actually, to be able to talk about books with her friends while we were learning at home. And this, I did this the few weeks before her teacher actually started doing some different things, so we kind of let it drop. But I have a book club grid, and then within the book club, I made an elementary book club, a middle school book club, a high school book club, and then a grown-up book club for any adults that wanted to talk about the books that they were reading. So the elementary book club was popping, and I'll show you what that one looks like. So within your topics, you can title them, and then you can embed a picture or a video or a GIF. So this is great. I've seen a lot of teachers record an actual mini lesson and they'll embed it into their Flipgrid where they're actually teaching the piece and then the students are responding to the lesson. And then you can type in your instructions. So I gave them some question stems for the elementary book club. And then within the responses, you'll have their name show up, and then they have the opportunity to take a selfie and then they can decorate it. So, and I thought that high school kids would think that was lame. Oh my gosh, they loved it. 16, 17-year-old kids really, really enjoyed Flipgrid. So I'll show you what those responses kind of look like. And then if you notice these little faces, these are people that have replied. So it's kids replying to each other about the books that they're reading, okay? So I will, let's see, which one is a good one of my kiddo? This was her first post, and they're limited to 1.5 minutes. So there's her selfie. So you get the gist of that. And you can see that Harper recorded a response to Kinley's video. They've never met. So this was shared out to a lot of people on social media for them to be able to have their kids plugged into. And so within the post, I'm not going to play it again. I'll pause it. You can see where there's an opportunity for whoever's watching to provide video feedback, and the only people that can see that feedback would be the original poster. Okay. If I wanted to grade Flipgrid responses, I can create a rubric for scoring, and then I can rank them, and I can leave verbal or I can leave typed comments here. Okay, I'm seeing that you could not hear the video played, either one of the videos. Is that correct? Well, guys, you missed out on some cute stuff. Basically, I don't know why. It's probably just because of the screen sharing. It's not picking up on the mic. But it was just her talking about her book. And then the other girl said, "Hi, Kinley, my name's Harper. That sounds like a good book. And I want to join your book club, if that's okay." So just very organic conversation here. You can go back and you can edit your videos or edit different things here, and then you can make it so that you can share responses or Flipgrids, but that's completely customizable to you. You can see down here the icon for Google Classroom and to Remind and Microsoft Teams, and then embedding. There's lots of different platforms that are already reserved there. And the only way as far as getting kids into a Flipgrid post, you have to have a code. So you'll give them a link and they have to have a code to get in. So there's ways that you can set it up to be secure for your class, and that you can make them password protected and all sorts of things. So then I can go on, and if I want to pick a few student samples to be able to put together, then I can create something called a mixtape with those responses. So when I go on here, I'm going to pause it here. You can look up and you can click to add the response to mixtapes. So then it can put together some highlights. If you want to show student samples to your class, if you're trying to give them an exemplar of what a good response should be like, and you ask the kid if it's okay, you could put together just 2 to 3 student responses that they can see as samples and share it that way. You can feature responses to be able to be one of the first ones up at the top. So if you have an original post that you want it to be featured, it's almost like pinning a tweet. If you've ever seen that before, you can do that too. And on the student end, they have complete control on being able to like add stickers, put their name on there, use different fonts. Kinley likes to color her hair. So, and I see Harper did that as well. But like this one, Kinley scribbled all over her face. This one, she made herself some hair and put a name on there. So it's just really fun. And then from your board, you can actually have the instructions read aloud to you. And then you can populate QR codes to distribute to students if that's an easier way to do it, okay? I'm looking at comments. I see that there's a lot of love about high school students have to be taught to be on screen because they forget the background sometimes. Y'all, we've learned this with Zoom as well. How many Zoom or Teams or whatever meetings have you been on where people are completely unaware of the background? And so this is a really safe and non-invasive platform to help kids feel comfortable with speaking. One thing that I will also tell you is you can customize different students' responses where some students will only be able to be seen by you. If you know that there are students that are so anxious and struggling with that idea of response that you want to give them some differentiated kind of gradual release, you can make it so that you're the only one that sees their video for a while until they get comfortable. Or I would say if you're having them do any kind of thing where they are reading aloud, that you can set that up to where you're the only one that's able to respond to those and you're the only one that's able to see those. So I've done that a lot with like fluency checks with my kids where I would ask them, pick a paragraph from the book that you're currently reading and just read to me. And then I want to respond and give you some feedback. So when we think about conferencing with kids, if you're using workshop model and you're not able to do that in a virtual space, Flipgrid is a great way to host some virtual conferences where you have them maybe talk through a couple of questions and then read a little bit to you, and then you can give them that short feedback as well. And then you are the only ones that see those posts, okay? Can you show how to have instructions read aloud? So this little button here with the immersive reader will take you to a place where you can do that. And it'll read each one in a bigger font, okay? For some reason, because my speaker and my microphone are kind of the same right now, y'all aren't able to hear that, but you can customize it over there with your text preferences and it will read it for you down here where you click play, okay? And that's built in to the board. So I'm gonna move on because I know that y'all wanna see more things. I wanna show you Kaizenna. That's a newer one. If we were playing with it, then I would actually have you post on one of my boards and you could see it from a student perspective. I will tell you that the app is probably your best bet with getting kids to actually post because they can do it from their phone really easily or their iPad. It is possible to record a Flipgrid online. You don't have to have the app. I just think it's a lot more user-friendly on an iPad or a tablet or a phone, something like that. How do you make the responses private? Risa, whenever you set up your grid, you can go in and it'll ask you all sorts of settings about like how long do you want your videos to be, all of those things, and there's a privacy setting in there, okay? All right, let's talk about Kaizenna because I'm willing to bet a lot of you have never heard of this one. Kaizenna is a Google Docs add-on. So I'm gonna show you what it looks like. When we're talking about add-ons, if you've never experienced that, all you have to do is go to the add-on tab, and then it says Get Add-ons. You click on that, and you type in Kaizenna, and then it'll add it to you. I will tell you, I think Google was mad at me the day that I added it on because it didn't work like the first few days. And then I talked to somebody else. I said, for some reason, it's not adding on for me. And then as I talked to them, it worked. So you know those things where you just need somebody else to be looking at it and then it works suddenly? That was kind of the situation. But what Kaizen is it's a way to give personalized feedback to students within the within a document. So I use Google Docs a lot, and I used to use this with my students where I would type in those Google comments. It's already embedded into the document, and that was a way that I could respond to kids. Kaizen takes that to a different level. And so you can see that it's already open over here. And I have a sample personal narrative that I'm using as a demo text, and I've already given some feedback. So you can see it's kind of like when you do use Google, when you use Google Docs, it'll highlight the text. But with Kaizen, you can do things like use a verbal comment. So I'm going to crank my volume all the way up and see if you can hear this comment. No? Okay, well then I'll show you live what this looks like. So if I was giving feedback here, then I might say, I really like this use of dialogue in your first, as your first sentence, kind of as your opener. So I've highlighted that text, and now I can go down and say what I want that feedback to look like. So let me move that up, where I can leave a voice recording. I want to attach that maybe to a skill that I'm noticing or giving some feedback on that I see the student doing. I want to maybe attach that to a lesson tutorial to give them some help, or I want to type in a text response. I typically use the voice message response. So I'm going to show you what that looks like here. I really like your use of dialogue as an opener for your personal narrative. I think that really makes your post accessible, and it allows your voice to show right off the bat where I'm really hearing that childlike innocence in your first couple of sentences. So then I stop it and it automatically posts it. I do see a question about, do students have to have the add-on to view your responses? Yes, it's free. If your kids are familiar with Google Docs, that can be something that you set up at the beginning of the year where you ask them to add on Kaizen, and they need to open it to get the feedback. The highlights parts will show up, but they won't be able to listen to your feedback unless they have that open as well. I have here also where I gave a quick evaluation on their use of voice in a section down here where I gave them a 3 out of 4 on voice. And then I can see the other levels here. So it's just a great way to customize the kind of feedback that you're giving, especially in a non-ideal situation where you can't have verbal conferences with students. They're getting to hear your voice, and that's a lot more meaningful a lot of times than me typing out 37,000 comments. And I can be a lot more responsive to what people are doing. So yeah, I'm looking at the different parts so students see the add-on. Yes. And Danielle, I think that's what it is. Whenever I take the audio off of these earbuds, then it doubles back. So I guess, unfortunately, we'll just have to pretend like we can hear each other right now. So I do apologize for that. But yes, Kaizen is free. And then I'm going to kind of sprint through these last couple of things. So when we're looking at text annotation and interaction, we want to give students as much authenticity as they can, and to use tools that would actually be useful to them outside of our classroom, I think is really, really important. So I am going to show you 2 different ones, and these are tools that I used as well, not only with teaching, but when I was getting my master's degree online and I was reading a lot of PDFs, I used these, I still use them constantly. So the first one is Kami, and Kami is a little add-on that you can use to Kami, you can use to annotate a PDF. Okay, so I'm going to show you what that looks like. So I have a PDF in my Google Drive. Okay, and when you look right here, it says open with. So it's asking me what I want to do. I have connected Kami, and you can do this when you go on the actual website and you download the app. It'll sync to your Google Drive. And I'll click annotate with Kami. And then it will open up. While it's opening, Allison, I saw it. Do you enter the skills? They have a set already populated in Kaizen. and you can choose from those, or you can add to them as you see. So you can start to build your own set of skills that you use, but they do have a few already preloaded, but you can customize that the more that you use that. Okay, so I've opened this and it's synced again to my Google Drive folder. So now I have a choice with highlighting, striking through, underlining, and then I can also leave comments. So let me move it over so you can see. I can also leave little comments, and I can make text boxes, shapes, I can draw. So I've seen a lot of kids use this on their iPad if they have a stylus where they can actually make those true annotations. I always have used it on my browser. So when I go and I'm reading here, and I notice the sentence with the dash here that I want to make a note of, then it'll pop up my comment. And it will save it in Google Drive so that whenever I finish, I can go right back on. And as long as I do it with Kami, it'll show all of these annotations ready to go. So it'll save a version of my PDF that I've annotated. So you'll have your clean one and then your annotated copy. Samantha, it's not a Chrome extension. You have to basically, I don't know, it's weird, it's hard to explain. So when you go to the actual website here, it'll ask you if you want to add Kami to your Google account, like to sync it with your Google account pretty much, and it will do it. And yes, Adrian, this is the free version. With the paid version, then you get to leave voice comments there, which is why I use Kaizenna for that. So it'll ask you, you can use Kami from your computer, open with Google Drive. Since I'm already logged in, it's auto-populating it, but it is free. And the way I learned how to use it was just kind of playing with it, but my students actually taught me about it a few years ago. They really liked it. They discovered it on their own, and I've seen it become a lot more popular as of late. You can change your color palettes, you can do all sorts of things, and everything with a lock on it means that you can't do it unless you have the paid version. But for what you would use this for, which is annotation, if you wanted to, I think that this is a great tool to get kids moving through text. Another one that you can use that I really like is Diigo, and that's D-I-I-G-O. The logo looks like this, and it is a Chrome extension. So right here you can see this little D, and when I click it, since I've added the extension, it asks me what I want to do. Do I want to save this website as a bookmark? Do I want to read and annotate it? Do I want to annotate a PDF or annotate a screenshot? So you can use Diigo without PDFs. You can use it with actual websites. So I'm going to show you what my Diigo page looks like. I think I have it pulled up already. So it will create a library for you. Anytime that you bookmark something and you start to annotate it and work with it, it will save it, and it will save all of your comments for you. So you can see I was looking at a plagiarism article. I looked at this AP language. I read an article about educational leadership. And then you can go over here and it will auto-populate some of the things that I've marked. And it'll tag it. So let's say I'm reading a blog post. I'm looking at the comments, so I want to make sure I'm meeting those needs. Do you know the difference between the Kami extension and what you're showing us? Elle, I'm assuming that you're referring to the Kami plugin. I'm not sure. I just know that the one that I'm using is not an extension, but I think it would do the same thing. It just might not only be connected to your Google Drive. It gives you a little bit more versatility. I would think it's the same. Does each student need Kami for themselves, or can we share it and allow the students to use it too? So my answer to that is I don't know the official answer, but I will say if we're wanting them to use the tool in a way that they're going to continue to use it, I don't want them to just annotate stuff for me. I want them to be able to use that for science or whatever. So I would have them added on. That's something that I would have them added on, which I want to go back to saying I don't want to use technology for technology's sake, because that can be really overwhelming for our kids. So I would have one thing that I'm using for annotations, right? One thing that I'm using for, let's say, video responses. I'm not going to ask kids to add 10 different things. I'm going to pick maybe 2 to 3 things that are going to get the job done for me, and I'm going to help kids feel really comfortable to use those things independently. So that's my advice on that. Beth, do these tools integrate with Canvas? If we were to upload a PDF to Canvas, because the students use Kami to annotate? Absolutely. They would download that PDF from Canvas, and they can use their Kami connection to do that. They just have to log in to Kami to be able to do it. And then they could download that annotated version and pop it right back in. Collaborative annotation. The short answer is yes, I think you can do that. I have not done it, but I think that you can. So the student sees your annotated PDF without needing Kami. So as long as you download your annotated PDF, to my understanding, yes, they would be able to see those marks. So I know I'm short on time. I'm just going to show you really quickly. I'm on this website. I want to save it as a bookmark. I can add any tags here. I can also mark that I want to read it later, or maybe I just want to annotate it. So I'm going to read it and I'm going to annotate it. And so it's still in website form, but now it's made it a little easier for me. So I can highlight something and it'll ask me, do I want to make a comment or do I want to highlight it? Make a copy of it. So then I can add in my comment here. It looks like a little sticky note. And then I can also add collaborators here too, where I can do this. You can use Diigo very easily as a group. This is one that's very, very useful for group annotations where you can have different colors and whatnot. That's cute, Day, that you think that I know the answer to that question. Will any of these be allowable for online testing? I seriously doubt it. I think that for online testing, if there's some kind of something for students to use, it will be something that TEA curates within that online platform if they are taking an online test. But I don't know. I never want to presume to know. But I know that we sprinted through some digital tools here. And I did that just so that you have the exposure. And again, it's always easier to learn tech, not necessarily in the moment, but to at least kind of have an idea of what you might want to use it for and then to go in and play. YouTube has so many tutorials. All you have to do is just search the tool and what you're wanting to do with it. And a lot of teachers will post their screens and just 5-minute, 10-minute videos on how to do it. I already found a video about how to use Diigo for group annotation the other day. I wasn't even looking for it, but you know, I was trying to find something.